Where are we going? Is someone else in the truck? What the hell is going on? November 18th, 2012. I was only 25 years old at the time. I had resigned from the company where I had been working as an architect for 5 years because I no longer wanted to live far from my family. Without telling them, I decided to move back home. The reason I planned most of my 15-hour journey to be overnight was so that they wouldn't realize I was on the road when they called. Before I hit the road, I was going to call and say I had a long day at work and was going straight to bed. While they were asleep, I would complete my drive, arrive around 7 in the morning, and surprise them with breakfast together. Although I was excited, I occasionally felt nervous and questioned whether I had made the right decision. It was a good job for someone my age. Even though working at the same place for 5 years had given me hope for a promotion, the loneliness had become unbearable, and I missed my family deeply. With those thoughts in mind, I packed up my belongings and hit the road in the afternoon. I had left from a small town in Oregon and was headed to Ely, Nevada, where my family lived. The journey would take me along the dark and lonely stretches of Route 50. The sky was overcast and heavy with dark clouds. After a few hours, night fell completely. The rain pounded against the windshield faster than the wipers could handle. I continued driving with soft music playing in the background. It was past midnight, around 12:40 a.m. I had finished the coffee I brought from home, and sleep was starting to creep in. I wanted to find a rest stop nearby to grab a snack, get some coffee, and stretch my legs. A sign up ahead showed a rest stop in 3 miles. I cracked the window a little, and the wind hitting my face helped me stay awake for the rest of the drive. I parked in front of the rest stop I saw on the right. There were 2 trucks, a pickup, and an old honey-colored Chevrolet parked in front. The rain was pouring heavily. I got out and got pretty soaked by the time I reached the door. I had to push a bit to open it. A chime rang as I walked in, probably to signal someone had entered. The moment the bell rang, before I could even shut the door, every head inside turned toward me. Having all eyes on me was a bit unsettling. I scanned the room quickly. One of them, with a faint smirk under his mustache, made eye contact with me. I quickly looked away. I went to the restroom first. After using the toilet and washing my face and hands, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were completely bloodshot. I walked out and headed to the food counter. There was a skinny kid, probably around 19, behind the counter. I ordered a chicken burger. While he prepared it, I rubbed my hands together to warm up. I took my burger and sat at an empty table, staring down the whole time. After eating, I went back to ask for a hot coffee. When I stepped back outside, I noticed 2 of the men I'd seen inside were now near my car. I hadn't seen or heard them leave. They must have walked out while I was in the restroom, and I hadn't heard the bell chime. When they saw me, they casually backed away and said, "Nice car." I didn't even feel like saying thank you. I nodded and quickly opened the door. I got in and started the engine. I got back on the road. The rain was intense. The wipers couldn't keep up. I was driving slower than usual because of it. About 10 miles in, thick smoke started pouring from the hood. I panicked. I had no idea what to do. What scared me more than the car breaking down was that it broke down on this kind of road. I pulled over. The headlights were still on, but the engine was dead. I tried starting the car again, but all I got was a weird clicking sound. The rain was now coming down in sheets. I pulled my hood up and opened the car's hood. But it was pointless. I only did it because it felt like what I was supposed to do. There were no lights around, no other cars or people. My phone had no signal. After waiting for about 25 minutes, a massive truck appeared in the distance. Its headlights pierced through the fog. I stuck out my thumb to hitchhike. I could barely see anything beyond the light. I was squinting to keep my eyes open. The truck slowed to a stop. The engine rumbled like a beast waking from sleep. The driver rolled down the window. My eyes were still adjusting from the glare of the headlights. But slowly I began to make out his face. He looked to be in his 50s, with dirty blonde facial hair. There was a weariness in his eyes, but also a noticeable emptiness. When he gave a small smile, I suddenly remembered he was the man from the rest stop. The one who smirked at me. The one who said my car was nice. "Got a problem, miss?" he asked. His voice was raspy, like a heavy smoker. I nodded and explained that my car had broken down, and I just needed a ride to the nearest rest stop. "Hop in. This weather will make you sick," he said. I was hesitant, but I didn't have another option. I wanted to feel the comfort of a familiar face, but instead, that familiarity only made me more uneasy. I opened the door and climbed in slowly. The inside of the truck was different than I expected. Gray leather seats, a small red plush toy hanging above the windshield, and an old country song playing on the radio. It was unusually warm in there, oddly comfortable for such a desolate road. As we got moving, he introduced himself. "Name's Walter." I forced a polite smile, but I wasn't at ease at all. As we drove on, I stared out the window, but the night outside looked darker than it should have been. After about 15 minutes, the radio suddenly cut off. A crackly voice came through. "You shouldn't have come." I flinched. "The radio acts up sometimes on these roads," Walter said, not taking his eyes off the road. I quickly pulled out my phone again. Still said no service. After a while, we turned off onto a different road. I noticed this route wasn't marked on the map. "Where are we going?" I asked. "It's a shortcut." "Don't worry," he replied. I wasn't reassured. It wasn't just the road. It was his voice that chilled me. Then I heard something. A door creaking open. From the back of the truck. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. I turned my head sharply. "Is someone else in the truck?" I asked, horrified. "No," Walter said. But his eye twitched. My hand instinctively went to the pepper spray in my bag. The dashboard light began to flicker. I heard a whisper. Right by my ear. But Walter didn't seem to notice a thing. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted. I looked at him. His face was blank, his eyes hollow. I reached for the door to get out. It was locked. I tried the window. Nothing. "Let me out!" I screamed, pulling at the door. "You've got nowhere to go," Walter said, turning toward me again. His pupils were darker than black. "I just wanted to help," he said with a twisted grin. Suddenly, the temperature in the truck dropped. The windows fogged up. I could barely breathe. He reached toward me, grabbed my arm, and started pulling me toward him. His eyes never left mine. Suddenly, the truck swerved wildly. He lost control of the wheel. Red and blue lights flashed all around us. In an instant, everything was lit up. Police surrounded the truck. They pulled Walter and me out. They wrapped me in a blanket. Walter was forced to the ground and handcuffed. The officers told me the 19-year-old kid from the rest stop had reported them. He overheard the truckers talking about sabotaging my car and planning something bad once they picked me up. The police had set up barricades and waited in the dark for us to appear. It turned out Walter had been involved in similar incidents before. After the man was taken into custody, they escorted me back to my car with a mechanic, and they got it fixed. I got behind the wheel and hit the road again. Driving after all that tension was incredibly difficult, but now I was too scared to stop anywhere for a break. All I wanted was to get home and enjoy a nice breakfast with my family. I decided I wouldn't tell anyone about what had happened, and I swore to myself that I would never take a road trip at night again.
I noticed some movement on the side of the road. My headlights lit up a man wearing a black jacket and black pants. We made eye contact for a moment. I had a strange feeling inside. My name is Marcus. I'm 26 years old. Whenever I tell people about that night, I'll remember for the rest of my life. They either say I'm lying or I've watched too many horror movies. Sometimes I also have my doubts, but I know very well what I saw and what I went through. I can't forget it. I can't forget it because sometimes at night I still hear the same sounds. That night I was driving through the mountainous regions of Vermont in the northeastern United States. I was working as a nature guide in a small town, and since the seasonal job had ended, I was driving back home to Massachusetts. The road was long, the weather was cold and foggy. While passing through the forest road, there was no phone signal, and almost everything was pitch dark. I've always loved traveling at night since childhood, especially when I laid down in the back seat and looked at the sky through the window, watching the stars and falling asleep with soft music playing. It was incredibly peaceful. Sometimes my parents would wake me up when we arrived at a rest stop. I'd shiver in the cold night air as I got out of the car to use the restroom. Then we'd eat and drink something warm as a family. Unfortunately, once I was awake, I couldn't fall back asleep and would spend the rest of the trip just watching the road. This time, however, I wasn't exactly enjoying the night drive. I felt tired, sleepless, and therefore tense. The music was making me even sleepier, and I was struggling to keep my eyes open. It was around 11 p.m. I noticed some movement on the side of the road. I quickly blinked a few times. Wondering if I was seeing things, I turned on the high beams. My headlights lit up a man wearing a black jacket and black pants. His pants were muddy and his jacket was torn. He was hitchhiking, his thumb held high. Like most people, I usually don't pick up hitchhikers, but this guy looked like he was about to freeze to death. We made eye contact for a moment. I had a strange feeling inside, but still, I pulled over. I unlocked the door and the man opened it, bent slightly and leaned his head inside. His jacket was old, but he didn't look that old himself. Maybe in his early 30s, average height, light brown hair, straight with jet black eyes. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Towards Southbridge. If you're going that way, just drop me off somewhere nearby," he said. It sounded normal. He sat in the front seat. He was quiet, just rubbing his cold hands. After a short silence, I asked how he got here. He said he was traveling by hitchhiking, that the last car had turned onto another road, so instead of standing still waiting for a new ride, he decided to walk. He said all this in a flat, emotionless tone, like someone repeating something they've lived through countless times. The conversation that followed between us was fairly ordinary. I asked what he did for work and whether he lived in Southbridge, but he gave vague answers. He only said, "It's been a long journey." When I asked his name, he paused for a moment, then he said, "My name's Alan." He smiled, but that smile, something felt really off. I was certain his name wasn't Alan and that he hadn't been hitchhiking this whole time. I don't know why, but something inside me was telling me not to trust him. Maybe it was just prejudice, I don't know. A little while later, I saw a gas station on the right. "Running low on fuel," I said and turned into it. Next to the station, there was a single-story motel that looked abandoned, with 2 old cars in front. Other than the station attendant, there was no one else around. I asked my hitchhiking companion, who had introduced himself as Alan, if he wanted anything. "Number just don't lock the car doors," he said. I thought he was joking. I smiled, but his face was serious. I hadn't planned on locking the doors anyway, and even if I did, he could have opened them from the inside if needed. I couldn't understand why he said that. I got out of the car, and with those thoughts in my head, I accidentally slammed the door hard. Then I raised my hand, gesturing as if to apologize. After filling the tank, I went inside, quickly paid, ordered a coffee, and went to the restroom. I washed my face and hands, grabbed my coffee, and walked out. When I got back to the car, the door was locked, but I didn't see him inside. I walked around the car. He was nowhere to be found. Where could he have gone in just a minute or two? Suddenly, I shivered, and it wasn't just from the cold. My whole body and hands felt frozen. With trembling hands, I opened the door and glanced at the back seat. No one. I got in the car, then something on the passenger seat caught my eye. A wet photograph, black and white, old, a woman and a child with a cabin in the background. The woman looked like she was in her 30s, well-groomed and beautiful. The child was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Written underneath in pen were the words, "Together forever." This photo definitely didn't just fall out of that man's pocket. It had been left there intentionally. I didn't even pick it up. I kept driving, but the uneasiness inside me grew. I constantly checked the rearview mirror and occasionally glanced at the photo. The radio suddenly started crackling. Then it went completely silent. As I tried to figure out what was going on, my phone screen went black. The car jolted for a second, as if someone had jumped onto the trunk. My heart started pounding like crazy. I pressed the gas pedal. I was practically trying to outrun something. Since the roads were straight, I saw a big illuminated sign up ahead. The thought that it might be another gas station gave me a bit of relief. With the idea of salvation in mind, I started driving faster. As I got closer to the station, I slowed down and turned in quickly. This time, I didn't get out of the car. I just looked around. Then it occurred to me to check the trunk. Got out, scanned the area cautiously, then slowly moved to the back of the car and gently opened the trunk. It was empty, but there were wet mud stains and burn marks on the floor. And then I smelled it, a horrible burnt flesh odor. I got back in the car, started it, and slowly drove away. When I looked in the rearview mirror, oh my God! I couldn't believe my eyes. He was sitting in the back seat. I hadn't heard any doors open. Or was I seeing things? Was all of this happening because of my lack of sleep? I slammed on the brakes and turned around, but the seat was empty. Only a new note on the back seat. "You're one of us now." I couldn't breathe. I left the car right there and ran. I spent the night at the nearest motel, and by spent the night, I don't mean I slept. I didn't get a wink of sleep. I kept thinking that man would come through the window, the door, or from under the bed at any moment. Just like when I was a kid, I even thought about hiding under the covers. I couldn't wait for daylight. When it finally got bright, I must have fallen asleep for an hour. When I woke up, I went straight to where I left the car. It was still there. It looked like it had been reported to the police as an abandoned vehicle. There were officers by my car. I went up to them and told them that my car had suddenly died during the night, so I went to the nearest motel and planned to call a mechanic in the morning. The officers understood. I glanced into the car, both the front and back seats, but the photograph, the note, everything was gone. I asked the officers if they had removed any notes or photos from inside. They said they hadn't seen anything and that the doors were locked. I leaned in and looked carefully through the window. There was only one thing left on the front seat, a muddy imprint, the mark of a body that had been sitting there. Months passed. I kept telling myself maybe I had just hallucinated the whole thing. But every night I wake up to the same sound, the same smell, the same shadow. And every time, that old photograph appears somewhere new in the house. Now there are 3 people, the woman, the child, and a man. My face.